They told her that blindness would make her useless in a world of light. They were wrong. Dr. Ilara then stood at the edge of the docking platform, feeling the vibrations hum through the metal beneath her boots, the low, resonant thrum of engines not yet stilled. Around her, the air was thick with tension and ozone. The scent of burning plasma clung to every breath. She could not see the alien vessel, but she could feel it. The way the air itself seemed to ripple around its presence, the faint shimmer of energy that brushed her skin like 1,000 whispering wings. Somewhere behind her, military personnel whispered in nervous clusters, their boots echoing in uneven patterns. Fear had a rhythm, she'd learned, and right now, it was beating fast. The ship before her was called the Prism, though no human eye had ever described its true form. The alien race, the Lunari, were beings of pure bioluminescence. They spoke not with sound, but with bursts of color and ultraviolet shimmer that no human could fully perceive. The first human delegation that had tried to communicate with them had returned half-blind and wholly terrified. One diplomat had clawed out his own eyes, screaming that the colors were alive. That was when they called her. Ilara had been blind since birth. To her, the universe had always been sound, texture, and vibration, the whisper of air, the murmur of walls, the breath between words. Where others saw chaos, she heard structure. Where others drowned in silence, she found symphony. It was that gift, or curse, that made her the perfect envoy to the creatures of light. She took a slow breath, extending her hand into the space ahead. The air was warmer, pulsating faintly, as if light had a heartbeat. A tremor passed through her palm, faint, rhythmic, pulsing like Morse code through the air. She smiled. They're speaking, she thought. Not in color, in vibration. Behind her, General Oren's voice barked through the static. "Dr. Venn, step back. We don't know if it's safe." She tilted her head, listening. His voice carried panic, edges of fear disguised as command. The alien pulse, on the other hand, was soft, curious, a question, not a threat. Ilara ignored him and took a single step forward. "They're not attacking," she said softly. "They're asking who we are." The silence that followed was colder than the void between stars. Within the shimmering field before her, the vibrations changed, faster now, staccato bursts that made the hair on her arms rise. Her device, strapped to her wrist, began to translate faintly, patterns of energy converted into low audio frequencies. She focused, interpreting the rhythm like a symphony. "We are the light beneath your skin," a strange phrase, poetic, but alien poetry often masked survival. When Ilara spoke, she didn't use words, she used tone. Her voice rose and fell in deliberate inflection, mirroring the vibrational cadence she felt. The field responded, thrumming in harmony. Around her, the air seemed to breathe. The soldiers gasped. A first contact, successful. But as soon as peace began to stir in their hearts, the alarms screamed. Red lights flared through the docking bay. Ilara turned instinctively toward the vibration of heavy movement, footsteps pounding metal, shouts overlapping. The Lunari ship's energy surged, pulsing in chaotic rhythm. Someone had fired. She heard the crackle of plasma through the air, felt the sonic ripple slam against her chest. The alien song turned sharp, fragmented, like glass breaking underwater. "Hold fire!" she screamed, but her voice drowned beneath the chaos. By the time the sirens fell silent, 6 soldiers were dead, and the Lunari had retreated into their radiant shell, vanishing into the dark. The first attempted peace had become a massacre. Days later, Ilara sat alone in her quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel
horizon. The hum of the ship's reactor filled the silence, a steady, low note she found oddly comforting. Her hands traced the braille reports spread before her. Official statements said it was a tragic misfire, but she knew better. The aliens' last vibration, before their ship vanished, was one word repeated in sorrowful rhythm: help. Now humanity was preparing for war. The Council had ordered a fleet mobilization toward the Lunari home system, an oceanic world of radiant storms orbiting a dying sun. The media called it the War of Light. Ilara called it madness. She had begged to go in person, to try again. No one listened. No one, until the aliens spoke once more. They didn't send light this time. They sent sound. At first it was just static, a faint hum intercepted by deep space arrays. But then it evolved into a pattern, a trembling frequency that only Ilara could decode. The message was simple: come alone. We will only speak to the one who does not see. The Council refused. It was too dangerous. But the message repeated, stronger each time, bleeding into communications, distorting satellite feeds. The aliens weren't threatening. They were waiting. Ilara disobeyed orders. She stole a transport pod. The journey to the Lunari world, Baran 9, was a descent into light. From orbit, the planet looked like a storm trapped in crystal, clouds glowing in impossible hues of blue and violet. But to Ilara, it was silent and magnificent, a storm she could feel in her bones. When her pod entered the atmosphere, the static wrapped around her hull like music. Every thunderclap was a syllable, every flash of lightning a word. She realized then that their language wasn't just sound or light, it was both, woven into the fabric of the planet itself. She landed on a floating island of glassy stone, surrounded by endless skies that shimmered with living auroras. The ground pulsed faintly, responding to her steps. She could sense the aliens nearby, their presence like warm wind and soft hum. "Dr. Venn," said a voice. It wasn't human, yet it spoke through her translator with eerie clarity. "You came." Ilara's heart froze. The vibration wasn't from one being, it was from many, layered in harmony. "Yes," she whispered, "because you asked." "Your kind burns what it does not understand," the voices replied. "We wanted to show you what we are before your fire consumes us." A silence followed, deep, endless. Then the ground beneath her began to tremble. The world itself was alive. Through her palms she felt the pulse of the planet, a heartbeat vast and slow. The Lunari were not merely inhabitants, they were extensions of their world, born from the light storms that powered their sun. But now that sun was dying, and their existence flickered with it. Their desperate transmissions, their bursts of blinding light, were calls for aid, not surrender. Ilara sank to her knees, tears spilling though she could not see them. "We didn't know," she said softly. "We thought you were attacking." "We were asking," they replied. "But you did not listen." She pressed her hand to the ground, feeling its fading warmth. "I'm listening now." The air shimmered with soundless thunder. Ilara stood at the heart of the glowing plain, her palms open to the storm that sang above her. Each pulse of lightning carried information. She could feel it ripple across her skin, like braille written in electricity. The Lunari surrounded her, their presence a symphony of soft hums, harmonic vibrations that wrapped around her like a gentle tide. They weren't physical in the way humans were. To her senses, they were heat, motion, resonance, light given consciousness. "You said your son is dying," Ilara murmured, her voice trembling. "What does that mean for you?" A dozen voices answered in overlapping cadence, their tones weaving through her bones. "We are born from the light. When it fades, we fade." Her breath hitched. Around her the storm grew quieter, as though listening. She extended one hand, fingers brushing the air where she felt the strongest vibration. It was warm, impossibly warm, like the pulse of life itself. "You're connected to the star," she whispered. "Yes, our lives are threads of its fire. It dims and we unravel." She turned her face upward toward the sky she couldn't see but could feel. There was a strange stillness there, a hollow vibration, like a drum with its skin split. "And you called for help," she said softly. "You sent light. We saw it as attack." A long silence followed. Then, in a tone that almost resembled grief, they said, "We thought you were light walkers too. We thought you would understand." Elara felt something break inside her. Humanity, for all its brilliance, had never learned to listen. The first instinct had been fear, to analyze, to control, to weaponize. And now, because of that fear, two species stood on the edge of annihilation. She clenched her fists. "I can still make them hear you," she whispered, "but I'll need your help." The vibrations around her deepened, harmonizing. "We will help," they said, "but hurry. The dark grows closer." For the next several hours, or maybe days, time was meaningless in that place. Elara worked beside them. They showed her the inner workings of their luminous world. Rivers of plasma flowing beneath translucent ground, mountains that hummed like organs in a cosmic cathedral. She walked through forests of glass where the trees sang when wind passed through them, their notes forming the base of the Lunari's communication network. Every sound, every pulse, every shimmer of heat was language, and Elara, through her synesthetic senses, was beginning to hear it all. The Lunari taught her how to translate emotion into vibration. She, in turn, taught them how humans felt love, guilt, and wonder through tone. How meaning could live in silence, not just light. The exchange was slow, fragile, and profound. In their songs, she heard sorrow older than humanity. In her voice, they heard a new possibility, that darkness could also hold beauty. One of them, a presence stronger and gentler than the rest, began to speak to her more often. Its name, when translated through her device, came out as Karen, though the true sound was a harmony that made her chest ache. "You perceive what others cannot," Karen said once, when she asked why they trusted her. "You hear truth not in color, but in rhythm. You do not see walls where others see shape." Elara smiled faintly. "Maybe blindness was always meant to bring me here." "Blindness?" Karen repeated, puzzled. "It means I cannot see light." A hush fell, an almost reverent silence. "Then you are closest to what we once were, before we learned to burn." Her throat tightened. There was something sacred in their words, a wisdom older than suns. But peace never lasts. It began as a low rumble, distant and foreign. The tremor of engines. She felt it in the ground long before the Lunari reacted. The rhythm was too precise, too metallic, human. The fleet had arrived. Above the luminous clouds, ships cut through the atmosphere like knives through silk. The human armada, the solar vanguard, had come to contain the threat. They didn't know Elara was alive, or worse, they didn't care. Her communicator flared to life, the static hissing with General Oren's voice. "Dr. Venn, you are ordered to evacuate immediately. The Council has authorized orbital strikes. The Lunari are too dangerous to risk another incident." Elara's blood turned to ice. "No!" she shouted, gripping the comm. "You can't! They're not attacking us, they're dying! If you fire, you'll destroy an entire civilization!" The Council made its decision. Your compassion blinds you, Doctor. You can't trust creatures made of energy. They can't coexist with us. She almost laughed at the irony. "Maybe it's us who can't coexist with anything we don't understand." Static swallowed his response. Above her, the air grew heavier.
the hum of weapons charging. Karen's voice reached her, trembling like a song on the edge of breaking. "Your kind brings the storm. We cannot fight it." Ilara's mind raced. There had to be a way, something, anything. Then she felt it. The rhythmic pulse deep below, faint but alive. The heartbeat of the planet itself. She fell to her knees, pressing both palms to the glassy soil. The planet was the Lunari. Its energy network, its storms, its life, all were one. And through it she could feel the resonance of their star, distant but connected. The dying sun. What if I could speak for you? Not to them, but through you. Karen hesitated. The bridge between light and flesh cannot hold. It can, she said fiercely. Let me try. Let me show them what you truly are. For a moment, nothing. Then the world answered. The ground beneath her vibrated with ancient energy. The air filled with harmonic resonance. The Lunari gathered around her, their forms merging into one radiant wave of warmth. The frequency climbed, higher and higher, until her translator cracked and fell silent. She didn't need it anymore. The vibrations entered her bones, her blood, her heartbeat. She wasn't just hearing them, she was becoming them. Her mind expanded, flooded with light she couldn't see but could feel. 1,000 sensations collided, sorrow, memory, hope, entire histories flashing through her consciousness like symphonies of heat and rhythm. She felt the first sunrise of their world, the creation of their species from the breath of their star, the millennia of peace, the terror of dimming light, and within it all she heard a voice, Karen's voice, whispering through the current. You are the bridge, but every bridge burns when crossed. She didn't care. She reached upward, channeling the harmony through her own voice. The sound that tore from her throat was not human. It was something else entirely. A resonance that rippled through the sky. Above the planet, the human fleet detected the anomaly. Sensors spiked. Communication channels filled with distortion. Commander shouted for readings they couldn't interpret. To their instruments, it looked like the planet itself was speaking, transmitting on every frequency, every wavelength, flooding the void with impossible energy patterns. It wasn't an attack, it was a plea. Stand down, Ilara whispered into the storm, her voice echoing across the planet's network. Listen to them. Listen to me. Her voice, carried by the Lunari's energy field, spread beyond the atmosphere, a symphony of sound and light interwoven. Ships paused mid-strike. Pilots clutched their heads as colors danced across their vision, sounds they couldn't describe echoing in their bones. For a moment, even the instruments of war fell silent, but then came the inevitable, a single missile fired in panic. The shockwave was instant. Ilara felt the air shatter. The energy web screamed. Karen's voice fractured into static. The Lunari's harmonies turned to chaos. The world convulsed beneath her. Ilara! Oren's voice crackled through the comm, desperate now. Get out of there! She ignored him. She could feel the network failing, the planet dying, its light unraveling like torn silk. The missile hadn't just struck the ground, it had pierced the planet's energy core. The Lunari would not survive another hit. Tears fell freely now, vanishing into the glow beneath her hands. Karen, she whispered, her voice trembling. I won't let it end this way. He said, you cannot stop the dark, but you can become the light that remains. The world was breaking. Ilara felt it not as sound nor sight, but as absence. A trembling silence spreading through every particle of air. The storm that once sang in endless harmony now faltered, dimming like a dying heartbeat. The Lunari's light flickered in uneven pulses, their once smooth vibrations turning jagged, discordant. The network that connected them, the living weave of their world, was collapsing. She knelt amid the chaos, hands pressed to the trembling ground. It pulsed weakly beneath her palms, as though the planet itself were gasping for breath. The scent of ozone filled the air, sharp and electric. Above her, human ships still loomed, shadows of metal and fear, weapons gleaming against the failing light. "Ilara," came Karan's fading whisper, his tone like the soft echo of a memory. "The song is ending." "No," she whispered back, "not yet." She felt the last remnants of their energy flowing beneath her, fractured, dying notes in an unfinished symphony. And in that moment, she understood the only way to save them was to complete the bridge, to link what was dying with what still lived, to fuse the last heartbeat of the Lunari to the pulse of humanity. But to do that, she would need to give herself entirely. The human fleet was preparing for another strike. She could feel the vibrations of their engines gathering strength, the sharp hum of charging plasma. The next blast would shatter the planet. She didn't have time to argue, to plead, or to explain. She had only one thing left, her voice. She took a deep breath and sang. It was not a human song, nor one of words. It was vibration, resonance, the pure language of being. Her voice rose through the storm like a beacon, merging with the fading harmonies of the Lunari. The air thickened, trembling with heat and emotion. Lightning bent toward her, as though drawn by her sound. The ground beneath her glowed, molten with light. Karen's presence enveloped her, gentle and sorrowful. "If you do this," he murmured, "you will not return." "I was never meant to return," she said. "I was meant to listen." He hesitated. "Then let us listen together." And then, in a burst of sound and light that transcended both language and flesh, they merged. To those aboard the Solar Vanguard, it was like watching the universe fold in on itself. Their scanners malfunctioned, their eyes burned with color that shouldn't exist. Below, on the planet's surface, a single point of blinding brilliance erupted. A fusion of white and gold and something beyond description. But within that storm, Ilara felt peace. Her body dissolved into vibration, every atom transformed into resonance. She could feel the Lunari, not around her, but as her. Their voices filled her mind, thousands singing in unison. Together, they became the planet's final pulse. Through them, she reached outward, beyond the sky, beyond the fleet, into the very frequencies of human communication. And across every ship, every radio, every neural link, her voice was heard. "Stop," it said. The word didn't come as sound, it came as sensation, a vibration that entered the bones of every listener. For a moment, time itself seemed to hold its breath. On the flagship bridge, General Orin froze. The lights flickered, his instruments pulsed with rhythmic energy. He could feel her warmth, her conviction, her sorrow. And for the first time in his life, he understood without needing to see. The enemies below were not monsters of light. They were people, beings who had only ever wanted to survive. "Cease fire," he whispered. Across the fleet, one by one, the weapons went silent. On the planet's surface, the explosion of energy began to settle. The storm dimmed, its edges softening. The brilliant light that once consumed the sky now pulsed, gently, like a great sleeping heart. The Lunari's presence lingered, faint,
harmonious, reborn through the bridge Ilara had created. But she was gone.
Not dead, not exactly. She had become part of the resonance, woven into the fabric of their being. The Lunari would survive now, their energy stabilized through the link she forged, a bridge that channeled a fragment of her own human essence into their dying star. It glowed a little brighter, enough to sustain them for generations more. And sometimes, when the Lunari sang beneath their renewed light, they could still feel her, a soft hum within their chorus, guiding their rhythm, reminding them what humanity could be when it chose to understand instead of destroy. Back on Earth, the war was declared over. The Council issued hollow apologies, built monuments, and called Ilara a hero. But the scientists who studied the remnants of the Lunari's world found something far stranger, a pattern embedded in the energy readings, rhythmic, deliberate, almost musical. When translated, it formed a message. In darkness, I found light. In silence, I heard truth. We are all vibrations of the same song. Years passed. Humanity changed. New diplomats learned to speak in frequencies rather than words. Entire academies were built to study resonant linguistics, a field born from Ilara Ven's sacrifice. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of sight or sound, the Lunari continued to sing, their music carried by solar winds, drifting across the stars. Sometimes, when deep space receivers on the edge of the solar system caught faint signals, pulsing, rhythmic, haunting, the analysts called it cosmic noise, but a few still recognized the pattern. It was the heartbeat of a blind woman who had taught the universe how to listen. In the silence that followed her sacrifice, the two species slowly learned what she had always known, that understanding does not come from eyes or light or words, but from the willingness to feel another's rhythm. And though her name faded into myth, her legacy lived on, in every bridge built between species, every piece forged through empathy, every silence that carried meaning. For in the end, Dr. Ilara Ven did not merely stop a war, she rewrote the sound of existence.